Hello. Welcome to the Eddie Conversation podcast. My name is Eddie Vigil, and I am your host. This is episode number 29. I am joined today by Ari Halpern.
Hi.
That is you. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me.
You are a script supervisor.
I'm a script supervisor.
Great. So, I mentioned to you, I've talked to one script supervisor before. That was Sarah Gerritsen. We talked primarily about the non-union world and kind of both of us being on the precipice of moving forward with joining the union and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to talk to you primarily about, I guess, your experiences pre-union, you're in the union.
Right.
And then just chatting all that.
The Eddie conversation.
The Eddie conversation. So, for starters, is there anything when you introduce yourself to people and you talk about what you do? Do you tack anything on to script? I don't know if you do any filmmaking on the side, if you produce,
I don't do anything in
or
filmmaking other than script supervising. I never have. I started as a PA on a couple films, but I think I was a terrible PA. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For those that don't know, that's production assistant.
Sure.
It's not a fun job. I was actually fired off a film for something that I didn't cause, but they needed somebody to blame.
Sounds like a classic PA scenario.
The only time I think I've ever been fired.
Okay, so all right, great. Strictly script supervisor. That's beautiful.
Yes.
For starters, I had Sarah do this as well, and it's always interesting to hear, because I'm sure you have plenty of experience answering this question. What does a script supervisor do? A
script supervisor is the person that is primarily involved in responsible for continuity on a show, but the way I tend to describe it is that I tell people, if you think of the theater, there's a stage manager, and the stage manager takes all the blocking notes and cues lines for actors if they need it. So the script supervisor is the record keeper of the shoot, and when a stage manager takes all the blocking notes, that's what we do as well. But during takes, we notate everything that an actor does, everything that happens, and as well as all the angles of the camera, so that when you have to come back to it or shoot something later, or you need to find something, you are the person responsible for getting that information.
Nice. That's.
And I occasionally cue lines for actors if they need it.
Right, for sure. Okay, that's a nice, succinct definition. Okay. I'm trying to think of, because that's the weird thing about script supervising is whenever it comes up, it takes, it's all right, let's sit down for a few minutes. And then, because of course I script supervise as well. So,
I also say that you're the person who sits next to the director and says, that works, that doesn't work, or that matches and that doesn't match. And people always ask, do you stop a take if something doesn't match? I'm like, well, I don't stop a take, but after a take, I'll say to the director, that didn't match, and then they can decide if they want to do it again or not. And in editing, I've watched stuff that I've script supervised where they use a take that doesn't match, and in your heart that you did something that did match, and for whatever reason, they used a take that didn't match, and you get used to it. It's fine. It's their show. I work, as we haven't talked about it yet, but I work on a show called the Goldbergs, and it's called the Goldbergs. It's not called the Ari Halperns.
Right.
So if Adam Goldberg wants that shot, then so be it.
Sure. So I guess just to reiterate okay, for sure. I think that's all. I mean, of course, it's all correct. I just want.
No, I'm lying.
And I'm thinking about how the job is mostly. It's pointing out the stuff, and it's whether or not the notes are taken, or that's kind of not really the point. I'm here to.
But I will say, and every script supervisor has gone through this. Mm-hmm. we have editors that use the notes, and we have editors that don't use the notes. And I've been part of productions where both are true. I've been part of productions where the editors absolutely don't use the notes, and I've been like on the Goldbergs. I know some of our editors. I've been in the editing room where I see, like, I happen to stop by and I see the notes sitting in front of them, which is great. It's a really nice feeling.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember that as a script supervisor, part of the job is, yes, it's great if they're going to use the notes in editing, but you're also there on set to make sure that everything will work out in editing. And a lot of times, just for interviewing for a job, I mean, I've been in situations where I've brought notes with me. They don't care what the notes look like. In the director and whoever is interviewing you, they don't care what your notes look like. It's a personality thing, and for sure they want to know that you've done stuff and you haven't been fired from 10,000 jobs. But you're meeting them so that they can see that, are you going to have that personality on set that is going to be mesh with the crew so that you feel comfortable saying something to the director or to the props person or to the actors that this is how it matches and this is how you should do it.
Right.
Or if it's going to be a production where you shouldn't do that and you should talk to the first AD first.
I like it.
And we've gotten way beyond the beginning stuff.
No, for sure. It's great. So I'm trying to, all right, the stuff I want to talk about.
Sure.
All of that. I want to talk about the personality stuff on like what it takes to be a script supervisor and like maybe, because of course I met you the first time through the Los Angeles Script Supervisor Network.
Yes. LASSN.
Yes. And my first time meeting you was back in the before times when it was one of the trivia events and
at the Union?
Yeah, at the Union.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that was my first time showing up to a thing. I had heard about the LASSN before, and then you were running the trivia event, which we'll get into trivia stuff at some point too.
Sure.
All right. So I want to talk about the personality stuff. What stuff that you do that people tend to like, and what kind of I'm interested in the conversations with talking with a new director too on what kind of stuff you're saying that you feel has helped get you the job, because that could be useful for other script supervisors watching, not for them to steal your stuff, but like.
Now, having said that, I had a Zoom interview for the first. I haven't interviewed for a job, I think, in 8 years.
Well, it's not. We'll see how helpful it is.
Sorry, 8 years, because I interviewed for the Goldbergs, but I had a Zoom interview a few weeks ago, and I didn't get the job. Let's say I haven't heard from them. So clearly, I don't remember what it's like to interview. Although, again, it was a Zoom interview, which
Okay, so wait, the Goldbergs has been running for how long?
We just finished our 8th season.
Dang.
We don't know yet if it'll be if we'll get a season 9. Currently, as far as I know, the Goldbergs is the top-rated sitcom on ABC. So I think this last week we beat the Connors. The only sitcom that was rated higher was Modern Family, but they're no longer on. So it's the top-rated sitcom on ABC, so it seems likely that it would get renewed. But because of the salaries and the cost to produce the show, it's a money issue. It's not show entertainment. So it's a money issue.
Okay. All right. So we might stick more into the craft side then, but no, for sure. Oh, regardless, it's.
What I don't know what I said.
Oh no! I was talking about the interview stuff.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Sure.
It was an interview for a show, and it was for I think it's like an American Horror Story spinoff. And I think they saw my resume, which is good, but it was a lot of half-hour sitcom or half-hour comedy, and one of the things that came up in the interview, I don't know if you want to talk about interview stuff now.
No, sure.
One of the things that came up in the interview was because it's an American Horror Story spinoff, and I don't know if any of your viewers are interviewing for it as well. I did not get the job, so good luck to anybody else, or at least I haven't heard from them. But it's an anthology series, so every episode is going to be an hour episode taking place in a different location, different cast for every episode. So
like Black Mirror style.
yes. So they're making a 1 hour movie every week. And so one of the main points that the person I interviewed with brought up was that because it's an anthology series, there is no going back. And if you miss something, that you've missed it. And so like on a half hour single camera sitcom, we're on the stage all the time. And so if we miss something, which I don't think we've ever missed anything, maybe a shot that they feel that, like later on that they needed.
Or if you get like like if the director has a vision during the edit, they can go back and add something. Or
it wouldn't be the director, but the producers will want something else. We used to get rewrites all the time, all the time. Never for continuity, but more because they've edited the show. And our assembly edits are about 28 minutes. The show runs at 21:50 or 21:30. Okay. So they are editing a quarter of the show out, a quarter of the show that we've shot. So a lot of times they will edit so much out, and the I don't know if the viewers know the Goldbergs, but we use a lot of voiceover. So the show takes place in the 80s. There is the adult Adam who is talking about his childhood in the 80s. And Patton Oswalt does the voiceover as the adult Adam. And so a lot of times they'll cut so much that they'll use Patton's voice to explain in one sentence what we shot for half a day. But it used to be that they relied on the voiceover so much that they would cut so much that two scenes next to each other now didn't make sense. So we would shoot like a 30-second rewrite of something that needed to bridge two scenes. Sure. I forgot where we started with this. But so anyway, we used to reshoot a lot. And so what this director was saying that I had interviewed with for the spinoff was that there was no reshoots. If you missed it, you missed it. And I think that was one of his major concerns, that he wanted somebody that wasn't used to just being on a stage at a house, 5 days a week.
Yeah, a little spoiled. Was the concern there?
Yeah, I mean, he was nice, very nice guy. He wasn't, but he felt like I didn't have a lot of experience, or that I hadn't done that in years, because I've been on the Golbergs for 8 years.
Sure. All right.
First world problems, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. From that, I want to jump into some topics that are more current in the LASSN discussion groups right now, and kind of get your thoughts on what those are.
I hope I have thoughts.
Sure, I'm sure you will. So this stuff, it doesn't affect you at all. That's why I'm very curious on what your thought process is on it, or what it was for you before you jumped in to Union. I should just pull. There's a guy who's kind of developed this little infographic of the non-union minimum, quote unquote minimum, to help guide script supervisors on here's like a standard for camera fees. Here's what what prep day you should look for. Here's what we should be pushing for as a collective. And I believe he has the minimum day rate as $300 for 12. And so I don't know how close you looked at that, or
I mean, I've seen that. I scanned it, but I didn't. I know what you're talking.
Yeah. So how do you feel? Yes.
What you have to understand is that I've been script supervising for a long time. And so when I first started script supervising, it was 1998. So that's 22 years ago.
Sure, congrats.
So when I first started on the non-union stuff, I mean, for us to make $300 a week, that was huge. and to make $100 a day, that was huge. And I'm not saying that anybody should take less. I would never say that. But it's astonishing to me that people who are starting out are asking for $300 a day.
I think, well, let me
And
clarify.
I don't think anybody should lessen their value at all.
No, for sure. I think the 300 is specifically for experienced non-union
Sure.
script.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's not. Yeah, because LA minimum by law currently is
Sure.
$210 a day.
And
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, back then, I guess the law wasn't looking out for us as they should be looking out for us. And like I said, I mean, the rule, and I don't know what's changed now because I don't look at the rules of entering the union, of getting into the union. At the time when I was joining, it was that you had to be paid $51 a day for your work. So which is obviously way less than minimum wage.
I don't know what minimum wage was. What was minimum back then?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't. And maybe it wasn't less than minimum wage. I don't know.
Sounds like
But
it
you
was.
had to be paid $51 a day for the day to count. So if you worked on a feature where you were paid $300 a week, however many weeks that was, that they divided that meant you got 5 days. Because 6 days was too many. Because 6 days would have been over $300.
Yeah.
So if you worked on a feature for 3 weeks and you got paid $300 a week, then you got 5 days per week, which is good. I mean, some features did 6 days a week, some, but you would not get, they divided it so that whatever the $51 a day was, that's how many days you got. And so you had to, call sheets didn't matter. It was that you had to get a letter. I had one production company that had a standard letter that they used that said this person made this much money, this many days, this is the person, this is the union they're trying to join. And from that, I basically typed that letter on my computer, and every movie I did where I was paid, some amount of money, I gave that to the producers and said, can you sign this? And
Right.
And so I had all those letters, and that's how I submitted it to the contract services. And
Yeah.
you look deep in thought.
I'm thinking of multiple things here. That sounds similar to the process that still exists.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But like I said, it amazes me that $300 a day is sort of the standard for non-union. Because obviously, yes, for sure, go for as much money. But I will tell you that I think when I first started on the Goldbergs, the pay I think was $34 an hour or something like that. So, and yeah, for sure, in the first season we had much longer days, but now we don't generally go more than 10 hours a day.
Nice.
So that's a union script supervisor. Now, I make more than that now because every year
Sure.
it goes up. But if you're talking, let's say, 10 hours in the first season for a union script supervisor, that's not much more than $300 a day. And so I say congratulations to the people who are doing that. But it amazes, for the next LASSN meeting, someone has asked me if I'll talk about what I've done for negotiations. I've never negotiated, which is probably terrible on my part. But I have always been under the assumption that, the union has a scale rate.
Okay.
And if you go to a job, I'm probably going to get a lot of enemies right now.
Please.
But if you go to a job and they tell you what the scale, they're going to pay scale. If I say, well, I want this and this and this, they're going to say no. And I could be very wrong. And for sure, in a first season of a show, when I interviewed for the Goldbergs, I didn't know anybody. There. They had already shot the pilot, and the person who did the pilot, I didn't know why she wasn't being hired. I've met her now. I didn't know her at the time, but I've met her now, and I still don't really know what the situation was, but I interviewed not with people I didn't know, and I got hired. And the thought of negotiating at that point would have been absurd.
Well, because that was for that was for the Goldbergs specifically.
Yes.
Prior to that, what show experience did you have prior to that, like that you leveraged to get onto that show?
So, right before the Goldbergs, I had done 2 seasons. Well, I'd done 1 season with a season after season 1 of Goldbergs. I did 2 seasons of Wilfred, which was a show on FX. It was a half hour.
Yeah.
It was a half hour. Elijah Wood and Jason Gann played the dog. It's the one with the dog, as people always say. Oh yeah, is that the one with the dog and the guy from Lord of the Rings?
right. It's a wacky show.
But I'd done a season of that, and I think I did 2. I ultimately did 2 seasons, but I think season 2 ended up being literally in between seasons 1 and 2 of Goldberg, so it worked out perfectly. It was seasons 3 and 4 of Wilfred. The script supervisor from season 1 and 2, they loved her. She is the most loved, one of the most loved script supervisors I've ever met in my life. But she always preferred films, and she told them when she was hired on the show that she's like, I'll do the show, but I prefer to work on films, and if I get hired on film, I'm going to leave. And that's what happened. She did seasons 1 and 2, and after season 2, she was hired on a film.
So it wasn't like a mid-season leave or something?
No.
Yeah, it was...
She had been hired on a film and didn't want to come back to Wilfred.
Yeah, is the expectation, because being that you've been with Goldbergs for so long, like, okay, my thought was you have a chance to land on a show, which I feel like is a great opportunity, and the first season, I don't know, most shows obviously don't go as long as the Goldbergs have gone.
For sure.
But having the steady gig for that long is like a nice...
For sure, and that's one of the reasons where when you're talking about $300 a day, that's the big difference between working on a movie that's going to go for 3 or 4 weeks. Obviously, $300 a day is much more important than doing a TV show where you're making about that much in the first season, maybe a little bit more, not much more, but the expectation is it's going to go a lot longer. Season.
And the season shoots longer than 3 weeks.
For sure, that's what I mean. So obviously, the $300 a day on a movie that you're talking about for the low budget independence is way more important than the $300 a day where you're going to have that for a much longer period. And in the first season, we shot, I think we did 22 episodes. So, it's and again, you're going to get now in single camera comedy for Union, you get a half hour wrap, which is ridiculous. That it used to be an hour, and in negotiations a few years back, they lost the hour.
To a half an hour.
I don't know how you lose something like that, especially on a single camera when the workflow is exactly the same as a movie. So you get a half hour wrap. That is something I have negotiated now. It's the only thing I've negotiated, and it wasn't really a negotiation. I basically said to our producer, who I now have known for years, I said, most days I can finish in half an hour, but sometimes I can't. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Just put your out time, So it's like some days I do get more, but in general, I can, as long as you stay on top of things throughout the day, I can finish within 10 or 20 minutes. But
yeah, and you were grandfathered in a little bit too, right? Like you had the hour before, and then it changed to half an hour?
It changed probably about a year before the Goldbergs started.
All right.
And it's funny because most of the at the time when Goldberg started, most of the second ADs didn't know that there was only a half an hour. So I was getting, I think they put an hour on my PR at first, and then I think someone probably told them that, that it changed or whatever.
No, for sure. Yeah, negotiating is tricky. I'll speak a little bit on my experience with I don't know, like...
Are your viewers going to hate me?
Oh, no. I'm just thinking about times where it's like, all right, the intention, of course, and I don't know your experience on this or how the position itself as a script supervisor, is oftentimes, especially in non-union world where you're dealing with a lot of people, like first-time directors and first-time producers and that kind of stuff, where people aren't quite familiar with the importance of the position and how much you can bring to the table.
I would say one of the things definitely to negotiate now is kit fee. I think that's an important thing that you can negotiate. When we started on the show, ABC had a rule that no matter what it was $10 a day. Everybody got $10 a day, and I even talked to other people about that on the show and on other ABC shows, and everybody said the same thing. It may have changed now since, but I still get $10 a day.
Yeah. So okay. So the importance of the position, and I think the main push with the rate is like we should be considered department head rate.
For sure.
If the DP or the AD or I don't know, I think somebody was comparing the rate to like if a key grip is making this amount over there, why am I making less than like the key grip? Like that kind of stuff. So the 300 benchmark specifically is just like FYI. At least practice pushing for
absolutely in non-union indie films or whatever, it should all be the same rate for all the department heads. I absolutely think that.
Yeah, because I know there was a commercial kind of similar to like your position of you've never negotiated a rate. There's the weird question that happens for sure where it's like, all right, hey, you available these dates? We're doing a commercial. What's your rate? Like they ask you, what is your rate?
Yeah.
And then I feel like Rookie League gave them a number and they were like, sweet, cool. Like that was great. I'm like, oh, I didn't give a number else.
Yeah. That happens to everybody.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I gave like, it was like 500 works for me.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, cool. Yeah. See you then. I'm like, shucks. And then when I turned my time card in, I remember like the AD's time card was the one I was like 1,200. I'm like, how much should I leave on the table here, man? Yeah. So stuff like that where I'm like, what? So it's a tricky situation for sure. For sure. But okay. So I'm trying to figure out where to go with that because okay, I was going to ask about the camaraderie among the community in general with the difference between 1998 non-union work to now. Of course, the internet's a thing. Facebook has tons of script supervisor groups, and there is an opportunity at least to have the conversations of like, here's what I'm going through, here's questions, and getting stuff answered. What's your experience like with like, I don't even know when AliSSN became a thing or
not. It's only been like a year or two.
Really?
Oh yeah. Hallie started it. My dates could be way wrong.
Sure.
But it definitely started during. Let's see.
Because I moved to LA 2.5 years ago. And I've been doing.
Imagine it was much more than that.
Yeah, so I've been working script supervising since then, which is lucky for me for the group.
Yeah, I mean maybe I'm way wrong,
sure.
But I feel like it hasn't been more than a few years.
Mm-hmm. So what's your experience like? Have you had the chance to mentor other people and give them kind of help like foundation building or what's...
I mean, I've talked to people before. I've had people visit me on set to see what it's like to do the job. The people that have visited me on set, Ty, she's visited me on set.
Yes.
And so, but she, at the time she was, I mean, she's a much more experienced script supervisor than someone who's just starting out.
Right.
And I think what most people find when they visit sets who are like primarily non-union indie movie script supervisors is how much easier the job is as you get into higher budget, which is absolutely true. Now, for me, I just like everybody else, I started in low budget short films and horror films, and I mean, I hate horror films. People love them, and I remember
But the blood.
very early on, I was doing some horror film. I don't remember which one it was. I mean, nothing that I ever did in that world of the horror films ever. A couple went to DVD. That's about it.
Sure. No cult classics or anything like that. Yeah.
Classic would never. It's not a word that you would ever use for any of these. But I'll talk a little bit about some of the ones that I did do that went somewhere. But this is very early on. I remember sitting at lunch one day with a group of people, and everyone was friendly, and they were all talking about their favorite horror movies, and they were saying names of movies. I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And someone asked me like what my favorite horror movie was, and I was like, I've seen Scream. That was the extent of which it isn't really a horror movie.
Sure.
I mean, since then I've now seen like, what was the one before Annabelle? The Following? Was that?
The Conjuring?
The Conjuring. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that.
The Conjuring, it's great for non-horror fans.
Right. I enjoyed that one. I've seen A Quiet Place. Mm-hmm. That was good.
John Krasinski.
Yes.
Emily Blunt.
I did not see the prequel, which I am interested in seeing. A Quiet Place 2.
Okay, the sequel.
Well, it's a sequel, but it takes place beforehand.
Is it? Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was like flashbacks and forwards. Like
I don't know. I thought it was only took place before, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
We'll see. Eventually, when that thing comes out.
Oh, no, it came out a while ago.
Did it?
Yeah.
No, it hasn't.
I think so.
I don't think so. Anyway, you saw it?
No, I didn't see it.
Okay.
I mean, I remember that it came out.
The Quiet Place 2?
Yes.
I'll probably Google that. But
yes.
Please, keep
I'm
going.
pretty sure it came out. I wouldn't swear to it because I'm not a horror fan.
So regardless, you were working on these indie horrors.
Yeah, so I was sitting at lunch. Like I said, I was sitting at lunch one day, and they're all talking about their favorite movies. I'm like, I have to get out of this world.
Yeah.
But my goal always had been TV. I absolutely wanted to work in TV. And because I was a TV person growing up, I saw movies probably more than the average person, but less than a movie buff. But I was a huge TV fanatic. And this is, obviously I'm a lot older than you, this is the 80s. I was a huge 80s TV buff. I watched almost every sitcom. And so my goal was always TV. And so when I was working in these low budget...
I got it.
Did it come out?
It's right here. You want to read that date up for me?
But that says Quiet Place Part 2. I don't know.
What do you mean? It's Quiet Place 2.
I swear I remember.
May 28th, 2021. Because it's a part of the HBO Max.
Well, maybe it was supposed to come out before the.
It's been
pandemic.
pushed. It's been pushed so many times.
All right.
It's not out yet.
I feel like I remember seeing so much about it, and maybe it got pushed because of COVID. But
yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I'm sure that's what happened. But it's not out, people. May. Keep your eyes peeled.
Does it say if it's a sequel, prequel, or?
I didn't dig that deep into it.
God, I could swear it had come out and come and gone. Anyway, so I had always wanted to work in TV, and like I said, I was working in these low budget horror movies. Sort of the jump. So I have sort of two levels of jumps in the career. If you want to talk about this,
please go for it. I'm very curious.
One was, I don't remember how I met him, but I met a guy named Kevin Van Hook, who started his...
I know Kevin Van Hook.
Do you know him personally, or you know him?
I've been on set with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he, back in the early 2000s, I don't know if I was union yet or not. So I had done a lot of low budget films, and I joined the union, but I don't think I worked a union job for probably 3 years before.
3 years of non-union work? Is that...
3 years of non-union work while I was also in the union. So I had joined the union in 2002 maybe.
Okay, so 4 years of non-union straight up, and then you joined and had 3 years of transition into union?
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I think I joined in 2002 with a lot of low-budget movies, and I think I worked for about 3 years before I had a union job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd have to look online to see when So I met Kevin Van Hook, and I don't remember how I met him, but I was hired on a movie that he did during that time. I don't remember. It was probably late 90s, so probably before I was in the union. No, I was probably in the union, but hadn't done a union job. He did a movie called The Fallen Ones. And I don't remember how I got hired on it, who I knew to get hired on it. I'd have to look it up because I have no recollection of that. And he ended up doing a series of movies that all... Now, having said, working with Kevin Van Hook, he does not use the notes at all. He has told me straight up he does not use the notes. But he is the type of person that he knew he needed a script supervisor on set to be a set of eyes. Because
there's more than just the notes that
yes.
Position, yeah.
And he is an editor. He edits his movies, and so he knew what he wanted. But he needed a script. He knew he needed a script supervisor on set.
Yeah. Matching action, eye lines, 180, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But he knew he wouldn't use the notes in editing. Sure. But I ended up being like his script supervisor for about 3 of his movies. And those movies ended up airing on the Sci-Fi Channel. So that was sort of my, like, the biggest movies I had done at that point. That were like, oh wow, they're actually, people are going to see them on TV.
So the first one was so did they eventually...
They were all non-union.
Okay.
They were all non-union.
All right.
And I was probably in the union at that point, but they were all non-union. And he is a very loyal person, and to this day I'm still friends with him. But yeah, I probably did 3 or 4 of his movies. The one that I didn't do during that time, he had gone to shoot it in Puerto Rico, and he just hired someone there who, from what I understand, barely spoke English. And she would tell him, like, oh, they said this instead of this, and she didn't understand English enough to know that it was basically the same thing. But, you know, he knew he needed to hire someone. But, yeah, so I did about 3 or 4 of his movies. And then my jump... So, like I said, I was a union script supervisor at that time, but I had not done a union job. I think... Oh, sorry. I'm not used to having a mic there.
Caressing
cut that out. My first union job was a movie that starred Wayne Brady. It was called, at the time it was called I'm Perfect, but spelled like imperfect. And it starred Wayne Brady and Ileana Douglas. And one of the nicest actresses I've ever met. She was Sidney Poitier's daughter, and her name was Sydney also. And the movie was produced by a really not nice guy who was who had previously been an actor, who is now a movie producer.
Sure. And
his big role as an actor was the mute villain in Superman 2.
Okay.
If you remember him, he was the big guy with the beard. I don't remember his name in the movie, but he was like, it was General Zod, and Ursula was the female villain, and he was the mute one.
Yeah.
And he had become a movie producer. And basically, the movie itself was a union movie, but it was, a low-budget union movie. And about 3 weeks into the film, they stopped paying us.
Okay.
And it's so my first union movie, like, they basically stole the funds, and we finished the movie expecting to be paid eventually, but it
never panned out.
Some people, it went into some sort of arbitration, I think I was away at the time when you needed to fill out a form to get paid for that final week, and it was like less than what they were supposed to do, and some people got paid, some people didn't. It was an insane. The DP, I think, ended up holding on to the footage until he got paid, and the director, who's also a super nice guy, and I felt so bad that this had happened because he was so. This was like at the time like one of the biggest things he was doing. He has since, super nice guy. He ended up doing some commercials that pole vaulted his career very high, and he ended up creating. He ended up writing and directing for The Blacklist, which is a TV show, a very big TV show, and then he ended up creating a show called LA's Finest.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that show.
And his name is Brandon Saunier, and he is the writer-director that ended up, I don't know if you heard about the accident that happened on set. It was a stunt that went really bad, where, from what I understand, this is very public.
Yeah.
I'm not revealing something.
For sure.
From what I understand, there was a car stunt that they were doing, and they put video, they had a video village in one area, but then they had these tiny monitors for the producer and the director and him. Or the director, he was the producing director, but I don't know if there might have been another writer-director. I don't know if he was directing the actual episode, but he was the producing director of the show. And so there were basically two people standing at small monitors near the stunt. And something happened, the car went wrong, and he ends up his leg got pinned between the car. I think what happened, I'm not sure of the details, but I think his leg got caught in a hole in the ground or something like that, and he ended up losing his leg. And so I'm friends with him on Facebook because of the original movie that we had done, this Imperfect, I'm Perfect movie, which was very imperfect.
Sure.
But he's so proud of the show, of LA's Finest, and I think they're still shooting. I hope the stunt people got fired. I don't know. I don't know the background of that. I don't know if I should say that on camera.
Sure.
But it is a stunt that went wrong, and he ends up losing his leg. And on Facebook, he's very positive, and he's gotten a prosthetic leg now, and he's still super nice and seems super positive. And his girlfriend at the time of our movie, who's now his wife, and they have 4 kids together. They're all
yeah. A lot has to go wrong for that kind of stuff to happen, which is scary.
I don't know why they set up a monitor so close to where it went wrong and whatever. That shouldn't have happened.
It's all. I think I recall. I'm pretty sure I saw some sort of thing pop up through some of the filmmaker groups and was reading through somebody from the set would comment in it and this is what happened. So I was like, all right, well, I don't know what's going on.
And I mean, he is just the nicest guy, and he's so positive all the time on Facebook and thanking everybody for the support and whatever. And I just can't even imagine what he's going through, but
for sure. So he was the first union. He
was the director of that movie that the producer ended up
That's a crazy first union experience.
But it ended up airing on TV. I'm like, how does that happen? It aired on ABC Family, which I think was at the time was not ABC Family. It was called something else. Maybe I don't.
Without you guys getting paid.
Without us getting paid for the final week of the film. It ended up airing as a movie called The List with Wayne Brady. It was a cute movie. It's like one of these romantic comedy kind of movies. And but that was my first union movie.
And you don't remember how you got into that? What the
I think I remember the producer, one of the line producer, not the one that stole the money. I interviewed with him. I think maybe he got my name through someone else who recommended me, and then I think it was one of those things where I didn't know anybody really on the movie. I mean, it's one of those situations where you get there and you're like, oh yeah, I worked with you before or whatever, but I don't think going into it, I think they just got my name from somebody and I interviewed and got the job.
Yeah, because I'm assuming, because that's the weird thing about joining the union too, is all right, sweet, all my connections are currently non-union.
Right.
How do I make that jump into the union world in any capacity? So I wasn't sure if
It
you
might, I will say it might have been a situation actually where it started as a non-union movie and flipped, and I was already union.
That would make sense.
That might have been the situation, but I don't remember.
'Cause that kind of makes sense with. I feel like that could work if they are paying these rates and it's like, all right, sweet, let's flip the show.
Yeah.
Like somebody flips the show, because if they're gonna embezzle the money anyway, then you would try to get away with going non-union first, and then it'd flip, and then you end up not paying. Like,
I honestly don't remember
know.
if it started as union or if it flipped. I truly don't remember. Although it seems like it makes more sense that it flipped, but I feel like I do remember thinking, like, oh, this is my first union movie. Although I could have thought of that
as it was flipping.
as it was flipping.
Yeah.
I honestly don't remember. And then, after that movie, it was back to a lot of non-union stuff. And so one of the only pieces of networking that I've ever done that ever paid off big time, I don't know if you or your audience has ever worked at Lacey Studios, which is basically a warehouse downtown. It's a huge warehouse downtown that they have different sections. They call themselves a studio. It looks just like a big warehouse. But they have different sections that look like different things. So they had a room that was like a courtroom, and they have a room that's looks like a house. And then they have an outside area that's sort of a dump that a lot of people shoot at, for car chases and whatever. That the car chase ends at this because it just looks terrible. Anyway, I was working on something non-union where we were told that it was footage that was going to go into a video game. I have no idea if that ever happened or not. But we were shooting there one day, and we were shooting in the courtroom and an outside area. And Lacey Studios had booked the majority of the rest of the place for the TV show Bones, which at the time was in its first season. It ran for 12 seasons. And they were sort of towards the end of their first season at that point. And they were there for basically a night shoot. And we were there for a day shoot. And we weren't in the area that they were using, but we were there for a day shoot. They were there for a night shoot. And so we had finished for the day, and I decided to go up to the script. It's very easy. In those days, it was very easy to find the script supervisor.
Is it harder these days?
Yes, because maybe it's not true, but I find that because so many script supervisors now are digital, they're not wearing the stopwatch, and they look, they're just carrying a computer, an iPad, which anybody can.
Yeah, producers and everybody.
Back in the day, the big binder and the stopwatch and the pens around the neck was a surefire sign that it was a script supervisor. And so because we were already there at the location, it was very easy to walk onto the set, and I found the script supervisor, and I went up to her and I said, I'm a union script supervisor. At that point, I'd been in the union for a couple of years, but only working that one job, basically. I think probably only the one job. And I said to her, I'm a script supervisor. If you're ever looking for someone for second unit, at the time I had cards. I haven't had a card in many, many years. I gave her my card. If you're ever looking for someone for second unit, give me a call. And a few weeks later, she needed someone for second unit, and she called another script supervisor that she knew. I don't know if you know Shannon Kenny, who is a TV script supervisor. She might actually be on American Horror Story right now. But at the time, she called her for second unit, and Shannon couldn't do it, and said, I had worked with her as a producer. She had produced a short film that I was the script supervisor for.
Okay.
And she said, I know the script supervisor named Ari. He might be available for second unit. And Billy, who was the Bone script supervisor, she was like, oh yeah, I just met him a few weeks ago. She called me. I ended up going in. The day went well. So the way a lot of dramas work, as your audience may or may not know, is that a lot of dramas are 8-day shows. They and they start, they run 8 days and they start the new episode on the 9th day. And then after a few weeks, they might do a second unit day. The way Bones worked was that they had a second unit day every 9th day. They were basically a 9-day show, but they were calling themselves an 8-day show, and then just had a second unit
And
every 9th
guaranteed,
day.
yeah.
And it was built into their schedule that way. They couldn't call themselves a 9-day show because fiscally it would end the season too late, and they needed to end in April or May, whenever they ended the season. But by being a 9-day show, it would have gone way over. So they just called themselves an 8-day show, and every 9th day they had a second unit while the main unit started the new episode. And so I ended up being their regular. I ended up being called basically every 9th day for a long time. And the script supervisor, I would still be doing like these low 3-week low budget movies. And usually she would have to find somebody during that time when I was working. But any time I finished, she would be like, okay, let's get you back in.
Yeah.
And she didn't have to do that. I mean, it was very nice of her. And that got me into the TV world, or at least not so much the TV world, but to know what it was like in the TV world. I will say the thing that got me into the TV world was that was my first experience of working in real TV shows. So that when I got my first show, I wasn't like all googly-eyed, which was nice because you want to have an air of like you've done it before.
Right.
The thing that got me into the TV world was a producer that I had worked with on a movie, or actually it was a movie that didn't end up going, but he had hired me for a movie. A low budget movie, ended up getting hired as a producer on a TV show called Party Down, which I don't know if you know Party Down. It is one of the best shows ever. I highly recommend it to anybody who has not seen it.
High praise.
It was originally on Starz, and it ended up getting picked up by Netflix, which was where it found its primary audience, but that was after the show was already done. It's no longer on Netflix, but it is now on Hulu.
Okay.
The first episode is a little slow, but after that, all the episodes after are so funny. It is a half-hour comedy about people that work at a catering company called Party Down. It's a scripted single-camera comedy. And it stars Adam Scott and Ken Marino, Jane Lynch, Martin Starr, Lizzie Kaplan, and Ryan Hansen, and then Megan Mullally was in season 2. And Jennifer, what's her last name? Jennifer, who's the woman that's in all the Christopher Guest movies?
There's a lot of Jennifers out there.
But she has the very big lips. She was in Legally Blonde. She played the older woman. She played Stifler's mom.
I'm sure I'd recognize her, but I
anyway, she when Jane Lynch left to do Glee, she stepped in and took. She didn't play the same role, but she basically took over for Jane Lynch. It's really bothering me that I cannot think of her name, but
it'll come back to you.
It may not even be Jennifer now. I think it is. She played Stifler's mom, and she's in all the Christopher Guest movies. She always plays the ditzy older blonde lady.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a great show. I got hired on it through this producer who I was supposed to do a movie for, but that movie fell through. And he hired me on the TV show, and through that is basically through that and through Bones is how I've gotten almost all my TV work. It's how I got a show called Children's Hospital. It's how I got probably Wilfred. Well, through people I knew through those shows.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, I highly recommend Party Down. So it's about a group of people that work at a catering company, and they're all wannabe actors and screenwriters.
And you can currently find it on Hulu.
Yes. Not a commercial.
No, I'll check it out for sure. Okay, so you mentioned that the time on Bones gave you the confidence to when you
Yes.
landed your own show, you're
Yes.
like, okay, sweet.
And it made me realize as a script supervisor that all this stuff that I was doing on the low budget movies comes into play, but every other department has been doing their job for years, and all the other departments are really good, and the actors generally know all their lines because they've been doing it for years, and you're like, oh my god, the job is so much easier because everybody knows what they're doing.
Right. There's less setups on the day, like that.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff. So what I was going to ask was, all right, so you had the experience of Bones with the ninth days and that kind of stuff.
And also filling in for the main unit occasionally when Billy was out or whatever.
So the other topic circling I think it's the script supervisor community as a whole is, from what I'm hearing, there is potentially a gap or a void being created in the union. Like there's people retiring in the script supervisor union world. There's not enough people entering the union world. It's something that
I don't know about that.
So regardless,
I feel like there's so many script supervisors. I don't know.
I don't know. I think so. There's a notion or I don't know even what to call this. What some union script supervisors talk. I think it's what's her name? Gilliam. She's been posting in Dawn Gilliam.
But she's the president of 871.
Okay.
I'm not sure if she's former or current.
Because she's on a show too. She's script supervisors.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
She's a script supervisor, but she's also the president of the local.
Cool.
I think. I mean, she definitely was. I think she still is, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. So she's been talking a lot about creating opportunity.
I'm sorry, she's not currently the president. I just remembered who is. But yes. But she's a big-time script supervisor.
Yeah. So she's been talking about finding ways for union script supervisors to help newer script supervisors with that kind of same thing. Is like, let's find a way to get them on set so that way when they do land the shows, they're representing the position properly and doing a good job.
She's one very much for script supervisor empowerment and bringing people in. And
so one thing that they're talking about for sure is trying to figure out a way of giving the script supervisor like an assistant position on some union shows, depending on if it warrants the workload Right. So I don't know what your thought is on how that would play
I'm all for that. I'm all for that. It's a very tough line. So I did one movie. It was a union movie there were two script supervisors, and the other one was Shannon Kenny. And it's a tough thing to figure out what the line is of who's going to do what. Mm-hmm. It has to be very well demarcated. I mean, again, both Shannon and I were union script supervisors, so it wasn't like an assistant. They just, for some reason, they put it in the budget to hire two script supervisors, and I think it was because it was a movie that was being shot like a multicam TV show. Mm-hmm. It was basically they were filming a play, so there were like 40-minute takes and.
Oh dang.
Now, I don't have multicam experience. I've never done a multicam show, so it was being shot like a play with 4 cameras.
Yeah.
So I don't remember why. I think they just said we should hire 2 script supervisors. Mm-hmm. So even Shannon and I were like, well, how are we going to break this up?
Because I mean, that's definitely different than,
Yes. And so it was like, well, maybe one person watches the continuity while one person does all the logging. And that's one way of doing it. Because I would love to not have to watch continuity. Mm-hmm. I think that's the hardest part of the job for sure, and it's the most heart pounding of like, uh-oh, what did I miss or whatever.
Yeah.
But then it always happens like, so a script supervisor told me early on. She wasn't the one that trained me, but she was the one that told me what script supervising was. She said to me, "You can't watch everything. It's impossible. It's impossible." And I've always remembered that. And over time, and as you get more and more experience, you learn what's important to watch. And sometimes I'll miss something, and I'll be like, "Oh my god, I must be the worst script supervisor in the world," because how did I miss something that was so important to watch?
Yeah.
And then another day you'll be like, "Yes, I'm the best script supervisor in the world because I knew that." Like, people were asking this question, only I saw it. Whatever.
Sure. Which feels great.
But more often it's like I'm the worst script supervisor in the world.
All right.
Yeah, it's just it's very difficult. I think that's a great idea to have an assistant, but I think it's very difficult to figure out what that demarcation is.
Yeah, because that's the weird part to me, for sure. Because of course, I love the idea of like, sweet, when I join the union, there's some sort of intro position to where like, all right, sweet, I can go and work this assistant role and get those reps on this set and get familiar with the lingo and the flow and what the notes, what the differences are and how it plays.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
have the wings there.
Now, I will say, it's sort of a fuzzy line with the Producers Guild because, like, for example, when I was working on Bones, there were occasions where some of the days where I did first unit, the reason I did first unit, so on Bones, they absolutely wanted a script timing for every episode. Which obviously is an extra fee. It's not part of the union package. And she had negotiated whatever she negotiated. I'm not sure what it was. But they would do these major rewrites on a show. And so they might be starting a show in a couple days, and a complete revision would come out, and they would want a script timing on it. So they would say to her, we want a timing on this. So she would call me midday or early in the day and say, "Can you come in later today and fill in because I need to go home and do a script timing on this." But in order to do that, they would have to get producers' approval to pay 2 script supervisors for the day, because if I come in for half the day, they still have to pay. There's a minimum guarantee. And so you have to get producers' approval. So that's the whole thing of that whole extra thing, because there's an 871 script supervisor guarantee that you're going to be paid for a day's work, even if you're coming in for a couple hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking about having an assistant, that's paying to now it may have to be worked out in negotiations. I'm talking about script supervisor negotiations of like, if there's going to be an assistant, what's that fee
it'd be like any other department, being like, all right, sweet, this is the number of PAs I need, this is the number of hands on the art department we need, and then back and forth with that. And normally, script supervisors don't have any backup, so it's already like, we don't expect to have additional on that.
But I think it's a great idea. But it's whatever, you have to decide what those duties are going to be.
Yeah. Because even, like you mentioned earlier, that the union world, in ways, is easier than the
for sure. I have said that for years. And I think everybody agrees with that.
So it's like, it's the weird thing of, wait, we need assistants in the non-union world. And then you can graduate
now, having said that, I have never personally worked on like a big budget movie. I've only done low budget. And at the time when I joined the union, that was, I mean, like I said, I worked for a couple of years still in the low budget world, non-union world. And I have primarily only done TV in the union world. And for sure that's easier.
Yeah. Okay. So
and more fun.
Yeah.
Because you get to see it aired.
That's nice too. Well, again, like you said, you haven't been on the big union movie, which ideally would air too.
Right.
Like
and
yeah.
like the only movies I've ever seen that I've worked on as movies wise were just like screenings, which is fun to see, but
For sure.
or a movie that played for a weekend at like the indie Lemley
Yeah.
movie theater.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of where to move next here because
Sorry, I've talked on so many tangents.
no, it's all good.
You wanted this.
No, it's great. All right, so non-union versus union. All right, I want to hear a little bit about the TV. So being the closest I've gotten to TV world is, I think I've been on like one set, and I got toured by a buddy of mine that I was like picking up a camera from or something for like a random thing, and he brought me to the set.
I will say I feel so bad because I love to bring people on, but now it's impossible.
Sure, it's not the time for extra people on set.
Yeah. No, we're not allowed.
Yeah,
No guests, whatever.
For sure.
You want me to talk a little bit about what it was like when I first started on Union TV, or?
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious on what the dynamic changes were going from the indie world into now you're in TV and you love it, and like what the relationships are with the directors coming in and how.
And that's
how
what I was actually
yeah.
going to talk about.
Yeah.
So when I first started on Goldbergs, and again, most of my TV before Goldbergs was like indie film. So Wilfred was all single camera. We block shot 5 episodes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
The whole season was 10 episodes, I think, for seasons 3 and 4 each, 10 episodes each season. And we block shot 5 episodes at a time. So that was very much like a film.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, digital script supervising was just beginning. It wasn't at the stage where it is now. And because we were block shooting 5 episodes at a time, I knew based on, like I mentioned Randall Einhorn before, he was our director for all 10 episodes. So, and I had worked with him before, so I knew that I needed to be not digital. There was no way that for what we were shooting that I would be able to be digital for that.
Okay.
Because I just knew that I needed to be able to jump between episodes all day.
Mm-hmm.
And before Wilfred was really before digital was anything what it was. So I didn't go digital until quite a bit later.
Yeah, and we'll get to that too.
And Party Down, I had done 2 seasons of Party Down, and Party Down was not an anthology show, but every episode was a different location. So, because the premise of Party Down was that every episode was a different party that they were catering. Mm-hmm. So every episode took place in one night. We were a 5-day show, but we essentially were a 4-day show with a production meeting on Mondays. So they loaded in on Mondays, and we shot Tuesday to Friday at this one location. So again, it was more like a film. So Goldbergs was really the first show that I'd done that was going to be on a stage. We had our own stage for the show. Our primary director for the first season was a guy named Seth Gordon, he directed Horrible Bosses. He was much more of a movie director and a documentary director. And now I know he's directed some episodes of For All Mankind. I mean, he's done a lot of TV, but he was our main director for the first season. And Seth, I always got along with him fine. He's a very booming presence. I don't want to use the term overbearing, but he's a very big presence. Mm-hmm. And he's very much a movie director. And he knew what he was doing, and he knew what he wanted. And so I think the way he treated me initially was that he just saw me as someone who might get in the way of his filmmaking.
Right. Like you're a distraction. And
yes, because he knew what he wanted. He didn't know me very well. So very early on, within like the first, he directed the first few episodes. I mean, direct in a row because that's impossible in TV when you're not block shooting. But within the first couple episodes, like I remember one day I pointed out something that he was missing in a scene. He had forgotten some shot
Just
or
like
whatever.
some coverage or something?
Yeah. And I mentioned it, and he's like, oh yeah, you're right. And from that point on, he treated me so much better. And he saw that I knew what I was doing. And from that point on, he basically listened to almost everything that I said. And, like I said, he knew what he was doing. And so I only spoke up when I needed to. And I think that was a thing about Bones as well. I just do the job. I don't I just speak when I need to, and I speak to the actors when I need to, and otherwise I'm just, I'm friendly.
Sure.
And that's about it.
How involved do you normally get with, are you...
I mean, now my role on the show is way different.
Well, I'm sure, because you're super established within...
I'm super established, and also because, so back then, we had three main directors. We had Seth, who...
You're talking about Goldbergs.
The Golbergs, yes. In the first couple seasons, our two main directors were Seth and David Katzenberg, who is of the Katzenberg line. But he really knew what he was doing. He had started in reality TV and worked his way up, and he really knew how directing worked and how TV worked. And I have a lot of respect for him because he, as I said, he came from a very, very, very wealthy family. But he really worked hard and knew what he was doing, and he's a great director now. And he and Seth were our two main directors for the first two seasons. David Katzenberg basically directed every other episode.
And then there's a showrunner on top of that too. Is there?
Yes. So I don't know how much I can say about this on camera, but the way most shows work. Is they have the director of the week. So in film, the director is the person, whether it's a man or... I don't want to say the man because it could be a man or woman, but the director is in charge.
Yeah.
In TV, the director is a visiting director usually. There's usually a producing director who directs the majority of the episodes, but then that director can't direct every episode because you have to prep every other week. So you have a lot of visiting directors. And so usually there's the writer of the week who is... Writers in TV are producers. So
there's a writer's room.
There's a writer's room, and the writer of the week is usually on set, and usually the showrunner can be on set as well. And so they set the tone of the episode because they're there every week and they know the tone of the show.
Yeah.
And so the director in TV is there to put their spin on it, but they need to be in continuity of the tone of the show. So that's what the writer and showrunner or executive producer is on set as well. Adam Goldberg of the Goldbergs, it's called the Goldbergs. Adam Goldberg hates being on set, so he was never there. He would show up early on. He would show up once in a while and say a couple things, but in general, they had a feed in the writer's room, and occasionally they would call down. But in general, he was not there. So we had a writer who was
a kind of stand-in for that role.
Stand-in for that role. So we had the writer of the week and that writer.
Yeah, like some sort of head writer of some capacity. Yeah.
Except he was hired as a writer, but then ended up just being on set all the time. So he became sort of the go-to guy. And his name is Lou Schneider, and he was on set all the time. Wonderful, wonderful person. Very, very funny. He was a writer on Everybody Loves Raymond for the entire run of the show. He had done Men of a Certain Age with Ray Romano again, so he'd done 2 shows with Ray. And then he became sort of our producing writer on set. After season 2 or 3, he became our producing director. He had never directed before. He feels like he could not direct outside of the Goldbergs because he has no directing background other than the Goldbergs. whereas Katzenberg and Seth Gordon, and our other main director was Jay Chandrasekhar, who was the director of Super Troopers and a lot of other films, and he's also an actor. So he had a film background, a film school background, and knew directing and knew lighting but is also an actor, so he knew acting as well. Mm-hmm. So technically, he's one of our directors that knows the most about filmmaking as an art and as a skill.
Yeah.
Whereas Lou, who is now one of our main directors, had no background.
Right.
He is an actor. He started as an actor and a writer, so he knows acting, but he knew nothing technically.
Sure.
And he's the first person to admit that. When he started directing, basically he felt like I, and our DP were basically leading him through everything that we needed.
Yeah, all the technical
and
stuff.
He'd be like, he'd see something on camera, he'd be like, okay, let's turn around. I'm like, no.
Right.
We need all the other coverage.
Yeah.
And be like, oh yeah. And he's a wonderful, wonderful person and listened to everything. And now he knows how to do the show. He feels like he couldn't do another show, which may or may not be true. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once you get the fundamentals down, I feel, I'm sure
he's basically, he wants to retire soon anyway.
Okay, sure.
And he has so much money from Raymond, so.
Oh, he's good. He doesn't need it, but.
So now so what was interesting was that he was the person on set for years not directing, but the person that sat next to the director saying we need this and we need this as in terms of the tone of the show. Okay. Yeah. And working with the actors and getting what he knew the editors would want, or not the editors, what the writers would want. But then he would see the final product, and he knew what the editors then use ultimately. He didn't sit in the editor's room until he was directing. Mm-hmm. But now that he's done that, he knows what the editors want, he knows what the writers want, he knows the tone of the show, and so he's one of our obviously main directors. But he views me. I would not say the microphone. He views me and our DP as the people who guided him through all that process. So he trusts me. Like if I say we're missing something, or if I say, I don't like to say now that I will say. I do say now, when he's directing, I'll be like, don't you want this? Don't you want this line like this, or don't you? And which with other directors I would never do.
Sure, that's more of a rapport.
That's a directing thing.
You've built that rapport over time.
Yeah, like. An actor is saying a line wrong, basically, because they're missing something or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that also comes with continuity of story arc, and so it is.
Sure, you can excuse that, yeah. Yeah,
but I mean, there are certain things that I will do now that I would never do beforehand
for sure.
or
on
another
sense.
show.
Yeah, 100%. Where does the AD fit in with all of that? Because you mentioned the DP and you.
Sorry, and the AD. I meant to say the AD as well.
I was like, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. We have one AD who. Most TV shows have alternating ADs. Okay. Because they do every other episode.
So they kind of alternate with the directors. Is that the way it goes?
Yes and no. So most TV shows will have alternating ADs for odd and even episodes, because they'll just do every other episode because they need to prep the next episode. Yeah. If a show has a director AD pair that they like working together, then yes, they'll set them up.
Well, I just mean when because a director can't direct every episode the same way an AD can.
Right. So Lou, on our show, who basically does the majority of our episodes now, he will primarily work with one AD, but it doesn't. He works with our other AD as well. Because we have visiting directors that have a schedule or whatever, and they want to get somebody in at a certain time. So, like, for example, Lou this year worked with one AD the majority of times, but at the end of the season, it ended up getting that he ended up working with the other AD for the last few. But prior to our current the current situation, we had another AD for a number of years who's no longer on the show, but he only worked with Katzenberg as a director. Like they basically stayed together.
Gotcha.
I mean, I guess it happened that he worked with our other directors as well, but primarily only worked with Katzenberg.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like hearing about the first season experience with that, because I always feel like there's that moment on, speaking non-union again here, I feel like there's always that moment where there's that, you have to prove yourself that you know what you're doing and that you're offering something that people aren't seeing, and that you're the one that's seeing the stuff that they're missing, or that kind of thing. So when you had the moment with the director where that click in the brain happened,
I even saw it happen.
Yeah, and that's because I'm definitely always keeping out for that, because you can tell when you're not really being acknowledged, and you're kind of like, you're not being included in conversations.
It happened with two of our directors, with Seth Gordon and with Jay Chandrasekhar, who, like I said, technically of all of our directors, I would say he is the most technically. I don't want to say intelligent, but technically
savvy,
experienced, because he has done basically everything. He's edited, he's directed, he's acted. Like Seth Gordon has never acted before, as far as I know.
Yeah,
he's only produced and directed and edited, whereas Jay started as an actor and comedian and whatever. So and also studied film in school, so he knows all about all of the fields.
So he was somebody you did have to win over? Or they didn't?
Yes, okay. Both of them. I saw it happen with both of them.
Yeah, because that's the interesting thing for me when I think about having to do that. It's like, I wonder why. Like, have they never worked with the script supervisor that's offered stuff to them, or is it like it's kind of like a weird?
I mean, maybe it happens. Well, I think maybe it happens with all their script supervisors. So, and again, in TV, you're the one that's there, whereas the director is visiting.
Right. So I would figure you'd be leaned on even more.
Yes, but they don't necessarily trust you, where they have script supervisors that they have trusted in the past. Where they're doing a movie and they hire the person that they want, whereas on the TV, they're stuck with you.
Yeah.
So they have to learn to trust you, and you have to earn their trust, which shouldn't necessarily be the case, but people are people, and that's what happens. That happens with everybody.
Yeah.
If I meet somebody if I'm going into a situation where, I mean, it happens with everybody. If I'm going into a situation, I don't know that I can trust you in your job.
Yeah, I guess I like the idea of the approach of, sweet, we're on this project together. You're here and I'm here. I'm gonna have this benefit of the doubt that you and then kind of just lean into it as if
we've had many directors, and with all our directors it's the two situations. One is that they've had script supervisors that they've used in the past, and you need to earn their trust, and other directors where they come in and be like, okay, I can trust you, you've been on this show for however many years, and they trust you. And I've had both situations.
For sure.
We have two of our directors that have directed a few episodes who I love, who were that situation. One was the actress Melissa Joan Hart, who is a great director, and she came in and trusted me right away, because she's like, you've been on the show, tell me, if I'm doing something that just doesn't fit with the show or whatever. And the writer is there, the producer is there for that too. We love Melissa Joan Hart, and we have a director named Christine Lakin, who started she was a child actress. She was on a show called Step by Step for many years. I don't know, you're too young to know that show.
I feel like I recognize the name.
It was an late 80s, early 90s early 90s sitcom.
Is that Nickelodeon? Or
no, it was on ABC, I think. It was with Suzanne Summers and Patrick Duffy. It was like a modern day at the time of the 90s, Brady Bunch. It was like a mixed family with 6 kids, I think, like almost exactly the same, but more modern. She was one of the kids on the show, and she grew up and ended up going much more into dancing, and was our choreographer on the show for several seasons, and then she was hired to direct, and she did a great job.
Very cool.
And so she's now directed numerous episodes of the show.
Nice. All right, I'm going to transition From
It's just something I wanted to talk about.
no, to really what I want to talk. No, the next topic is very simple to start, and I am very curious to hear your take on it. It's very controversial in the Script Supervisor community.
Is it going to be digital? Yes.
So,
and I have very strong opinions about it, actually.
Pencil, paper, and then digital, and there's different formats of digital.
I have very strong opinions, actually, about it.
Okay, great. So let's start generally, and I might focus in on some stuff. But yeah.
So I feel like, at least in training, everybody should start pencil and paper. Everybody. Now, what that means, so I think starting with pencil and paper teaches you what you need to do for the job, because you're not focused on buttons and what I need to press for the job. So a long time ago, I used to teach math, and it's the same exact thing. People were relying way too heavily on calculators to do calculations and they weren't understanding the mechanics behind what you're doing.
Yeah, the step-by-step process of what's actually going on. Yeah.
So I'm all about starting pencil and paper. Now, of course, digital, is for most aspects is way easier, but you need to understand the mechanics of what you're doing first, and focusing on the job of what you're looking at as a whole. In terms of digital, I was very early on. I had Scripty on my computer very early on, way long before it was what it is now, and it was terrible.
Sure. When was this?
2007-ish.
Okay, like smartphone era age, kind of around there.
Yes. And this is before iPads existed.
Sure.
And it made the job so much harder. And I will say the reason I got it in the first place, I didn't want to use it. Our post producer, who I'm friendly with now, I was very mad at him because, and I'm not going to say what show it is right now that I started it on, because now that I've said it's the post producer, he basically had done a project before the one that I worked with him on, where he thought that do you know what is it called? Scripter is? I think that's what it's called. Scripter is a program that Avid uses. I'm sure there are multiple programs that do this now, that they line up in a take. It can use audio recognition. It can also do it manually, where it lines up a line in the script with what what the actor is saying.
No.
So what it does is you load the script into the program, and it takes a take and follows using audio recognition. It follows the take along with the script.
So live on the day.
No, in editing.
Oh, in edit. Okay.
In editing. Sorry.
Yeah.
In editing, I think it's called Scripter. It takes a line in the script and it matches it with the actor saying the line. Now you can also do it manually, and you say, okay, this point in the film matches this line in the script. This point in the film matches this line in the script.
And it's like an assistant editor kind of software where it helps them kind of
sync.
They can click on a line and find all the clips for it. Okay,
that's what it does. So it works very well in procedural kind of dramas to do the audio automatic sync, because the actors say the lines almost exactly. In ad-libbing kind of situations, the assistant editor needs to really mark it. So our post-producer had been on a show that had that, and he thought that the script supervisor had done it. Didn't know that the assistant editor was doing it, which says a lot about his position at the time.
Sure.
I'm sure he has since grown as a post-producer, but at the time, for him to not know that was very not good. I hope he's not watching. But
It happens.
he thought that they had used Scripty, which they had not. They had used Scripter,
Yeah.
which I think was the name of it.
Yeah.
And so he told that to the producers of the show that I was working on and said, oh my God, this is a great, great tool, which it is a great tool, but it was the assistant
It was
editors
the wrong
doing
tool.
it in post.
Yeah.
And so they insisted that I get this. And at the time, Scripty was not what it was, or what it has become.
Yeah, it was very early. Sounds.
And it made the job so much harder. And later on, once I started, he realized that it wasn't Scripty that was doing it, and I was so mad.
Yeah, cause like once you got the notes sent in and stuff, and it was like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
It was all PDFs and whatever.
Yeah.
So from that, I went back to pencil and paper after that job, and I probably actually went back to pencil and paper during that job because I just couldn't use Scripty.
Because you mentioned earlier you had that one show that was doing the block shooting with the 5.
And that's when I knew like there was no way Scripty could handle what I needed to be able to do during
at that time.
that time. Then I did try Scripty. So I went to pencil and paper for the first season of Wilfred. The first season being the third season of Wilfred. My first season. When I went back, when I started on Goldbergs, I think I did use Scripty for the first few months, and I hated it so much. It was very tough to use for what I needed to, for what I knew I needed to do.
Even with the revision since the last time you had used it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had gone to iPad at that point, and I was using it on the iPad, and it was better on the iPad, but it's still. I find that the problem with Scripty. First of all, this was also before they had 2 different rap reports, and even then it was, the rap report was so ridiculously complicated. What I felt I needed to be able to do, one of the problems with Scripty is that it is not customizable. I've said this for many, many years, and this is true in script supervising, and it's true in every field. Every job is different, and for a program to not be customizable is a huge flaw of the program. It is not customizable for what you need to. Every show is different, and every person is different and possibly wants different things. And so I scrapped using Scripty very early on in Goldbergs, and I went back. I didn't do pencil and paper, but I sat down probably during Christmas break, and I designed my own thing, which I still use to this day. I compiled sort of like 2 or 3 main programs that I use on the iPad, and I call myself a pencil and paper script supervisor on the iPad. That's how I do it. Everything I do is on the iPad, but it's exactly like pencil and paper, just digital. And it's so much easier. I finish in 10 to 20 minutes at the end of the night. I do my lining on, so my sort of workflow is that I use PDF Expert to line the script. I use Pages to do my facing pages. I use Numbers to do my log, and I constantly just have them open. I go very quickly between the 3. It's pencil and paper, but on iPad. I copy and paste notes between one to the other, and at the end of the day, I compile all the facing pages and script pages together, and I send it off.
What do you do for timing of the?
I have a stopwatch around my neck.
Oh, nice.
Now, having said that, I'm on a show that they don't care about that, because the way we shoot on our show is and I'm sure a lot of shows do this too, they'll do a couple lines, and then we'll go back 1 line, and then we'll go 3 more lines ahead, and then we'll go back 2 lines. There is absolutely no way to mark a series. I'll be like, if they say, yeah, we liked how we said that one that time, that was literally in the middle of a 5-minute take, where you did the line 5,000 times.
Yeah.
So I try to mark it if I can, like, I got a call from the assistant editor once. She was laughing hysterically because she said, we had an actor walk off once in the middle of a take. He just was like, he was very upset about something and he walked off. And so the director really liked the line, the way the line was said at some point. So I marked it as the way he said it, like one before when he walked off. And she found it, and
Sure.
you know,
It's easy to find right there.
but she didn't call me. She emailed me. She said I was laughing hysterically at that note, which I was very happy she was reading the notes.
Right. Wait, the note's great. Thank you for seeing that.
But that's how I started to mark things. Occasionally I'll number lines. I don't generally do that because of the way we shoot. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If I'm working on something where I know it will make a difference, I do number them. But all my stuff is done basically writing. I mean, I type the notes up, of course, but I still line by hand. And
So yeah, being that you've been on the same show, it makes sense that you've got your sheets designed for how the show works. And hypothetically speaking, if you did land another gig, you would just kind of make alterations to what that show needs.
There's nothing that is uneditable in my world. It's all changeable, but it works very well. Like I said, it's exactly like pencil and paper, just on an iPad. And I have my rap report is very simple. I think the scripty rap report looks unbelievably confusing. My rap report is very simple, and not only that, it's all done on numbers, but it's very clean. So I basically put in the numbers and it does all the math. Not that I couldn't. I mean, it's so. When script supervisors complain about the math, it drives me insane.
What
It
math?
is not hard math.
What math do script supervisors complain? Like the page
Adding
counts?
page counts and adding time.
I've heard that too. Fractions can be difficult for people. Yeah, they're not all
They
math.
should not be.
They're not all math teachers.
People think in fractions all the time.
No, I have no issue. I studied engineering before script supervising, so
Fractions should not be difficult to add an eighth and 5/8.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't. And if you don't understand it, that's totally fine. But you need to sit down and learn it. Because if your computer crashes, you need to be able to add.
Add those fractions.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm being so tough on adding fractions.
It gets really Look, I'm just going to, it's like half jokingly here. It gets really complicated when you have 2 7/8 page plus a 1 3/8 page.
For sure. Now, I will say, like I said, I don't do it anymore because I have it all set up, including in my breakdown. Because I don't use a scripty breakdown, I do my own breakdown. And I have it set up. And at the end of the last column in my breakdown is the page count. So I'll just write in 5/8 or whatever, and then the next thing is 1 3/8. And numbers, and I'm sure Excel does too, they have a setting to put things in eighths. So I'll write it in eighths. And at the bottom of that column, I say, add all the numbers in the column. And it shows, so it adds them all up for me. I don't have to add it up. I do add up every day what we're shooting, because I go by my breakdown in the page counts for the end of the day.
Oh, versus what the call sheet says. Yeah.
Yes, because and the second ADs will use my page counts on the call sheet, unless something is really weird because we're shooting in parts or whatever. But at the end of the week, if mine doesn't zero out, I get really nervous and upset because I have used my page counts that added by the computer, so it should zero out, no matter what.
It have to be human error on the input at some point, yeah.
Right.
No, for sure, I get it. I just know, like, I have to go back into like elementary school mode sometimes. I'm like, all right, the 2 plus the 3, we have 10/8, we got to move the 1 over.
Well, I hate to say this, but I hope all script supervisors have passed elementary school.
For sure.
And even middle school.
Ideally.
Because being a script supervisor, you have to be a very intelligent person to be able to figure out all the stuff you need to be able to figure out, because there is so much stuff.
So back to, all right, so that's how you've catered your own workflow. So
Yes.
when you say, let's say you have to get somebody to fill in for you for the day, and then you're calling somebody up you never worked with, and then and you ask like, what's your preference on what they're working with? Is it scare it, scripty? If they say pen and paper, do you get scared, or like what's the?
I don't know of any union script supervisors now that are pen and paper. I assume most are digital, or all the ones that would fill in for me are digital.
Mm-hmm.
If they were pen and paper, I would find that a little odd because, in general,
you'd be like, why?
exactly,
Yeah.
because at the end, the thing that it helps being digital the most, I think, is the end of the day. You don't have to find a copier anymore, and you just send off the notes. For sure, that's the one huge benefit.
Yeah, the scanning and stuff.
I mean, that's so much extra time that you don't need. But because everything that I do is pencil and paper but on digital,
sure,
it doesn't matter to me what they do because the output of all of those systems is PDF.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I need to add it into mine.
Okay.
And that's why it bugs me when people say, well, I need to find somebody that's scripty. Really? You're basically saying all these people can't work for you.
Yeah, for sure. So
I would never want to be in that position to tell someone, sorry, you can't do it because you're using a program that, I don't like scripty, but I don't care if you use it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the look of it, like my notes are way cleaner than what scripty looks like. But if you're happy with it, if that helps you, fine. I know people who love scripty, and they filled in for me before.
Okay, so yeah, you don't. So there's from your perspective, because I was trying to see if you would take a side, but
my side is that I hate scripty. Sorry,
but it's not. You're not gonna keep somebody off your.
Tim who filled in for me, he uses scripty.
Yeah, and you get the notes. You're like, all right, sweet. These are it's fine because it's.
Yeah, I do find the scripty notes are much more hard to read than if you're doing it as your own sort of make it neat.
Yeah.
Because it's uncustomizable.
Mm-hmm. It's just like the big block there.
Yeah. But yeah, people have filled in for me with scripty. People have filled in for me with Scarlet. I will say the one I do like the most of all the digital systems, and I think if I went digital to one of the systems, it would be this one. Is the Movie Magic one? Not movie. It's the one. I have it on my iPad. It's the one that started as a sound one.
It's like some sort of Slate app or something.
Yeah, Movie Slate. Sorry, yeah,
Movie Slate. Okay.
Yeah. That one is the most customizable and looks the most like what I do with my thing. The thing that I don't like about it is the lining because and this is just a preference, it uses like all different colors and I like everything to look sleek and I feel like that makes it look very busy and harder to read. Movie Slate I think is a good one. And I suspect Scriptation is good. I have not tried it.
Yeah, because I know, like, I had somebody reach out to me that was newer and wanted to just pick my brain a little bit, and they were asking about the apps too, and they're like, what are your thoughts on this? I've heard good things about Movie Slate, and I'm like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, Movie Slate is it's very similar to just pencil and paper, but just all digital. The only flaw, one of the flaws of Movie Slate is that and this is true of all digital programs, because the way it has to create the files is very orderly, and so when you're trying to find something, the way to go back to something is a little bit difficult because everything has its place.
Yeah.
But look-wise, it's sort of the most natural one.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And most sound mixers use Movie Slate, and so if there was a way to at some point sync that would be great. Like so every night I do my circles with the sound mixer, and it would be great if we could just touch iPads, and there you go.
airdrop each other the thing.
But I don't use Movie Slate. But
yeah.
But I think either Movie Slate or Scriptation are the two.
Yeah, that would be interesting. All right. So another thing I wanted, because I know back in the day when we would have the Script Supervisor meetups, I remember hearing you talk about your process with video feed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious on the evolution of that for yourself, on going from pencil paper in the early days to your process now, and
so I think my process of video feed is probably different from most people.
Yeah.
It's still the same, and I think if I were on any other show, I would have to figure out a new process. So my process of video feed is I basically sit my computer by the monitor.
You have a laptop.
I have a laptop that sits by the monitor. I have a MacBook Pro, which has 2 inputs, and we use 2 cameras all the time. And so I have 2 Blackmagic mini recorders. And so my computer just takes in the feed of the 2 monitors. And then I use Security Spy. And so Security Spy has a setting where you can just take pictures. It just continuously takes pictures and saves them into a file. And so I have it set to take pictures every 2 seconds for both cameras. And so basically all day my computer is just taking in whatever the video feed is and taking pictures every 2 seconds. And if I need to check a picture, I do. Because obviously it's taking thousands of pictures, but after a very short period of time, I got very used to being able to find things very quickly, because it's just an order of what you're shooting.
Sure.
And the most recent thing you're shooting, which is generally what I'm going to be looking for, is just at the bottom.
And it's easy enough to start and stop the 2-second
Yes.
function. Like it's like, all right, roll, equivalent of like we're rolling.
I let it. I don't even sit by the computer. I mean, it's just like if I'm watching the monitor, the computer is just like over here.
Okay.
And it's just rolling all the time.
So
it's
even when set up, all right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so there's that.
So when I work on a commercial, which obviously, like I said, I've done maybe 3 or 4 commercials my entire life, but I use my computer on the commercial. I don't do the iPad on the commercial. Well, I have. I've done. Generally on commercial, I use my computer, because that way I just have it set to take the feed in directly, and I just use my computer, because lining isn't as important on a commercial. And so that's the reason I use my iPad, is because it's easy to line on an iPad.
Okay. So how long have you been rolling with that?
8 years.
Okay, so you have been doing that the whole time. All right. I wasn't sure if that was like a newer approach, like maybe you had tried other, because there are other video feed software.
I'm trying to remember how I did it before, because my computer is 2015. So I couldn't have been doing that before season 3. I don't remember what I did before that.
So you've been on that for, okay.
Maybe I did it with just one. No, I don't remember.
Maybe it'll come back to you later.
Maybe I was just taking pictures. I might have just been taking pictures with my iPhone of the monitor. Probably that's what I was doing.
Okay. Yeah, because when I script supervise, because that's like the weird thing about, I'm curious to hear what your take is on screen grabs in general. With my assumption is, in Union World, we're told that like nobody's going to ask you for the screen grabs; those are for your own personal use, because there's either the DAT or the VTR.
No, that's not true. That's not true. So most shows don't have VTR. Most TV shows
that's like
don't have
commercial
VTR.
primarily.
Yeah, commercials have VTR. DIT will not play back stuff. I mean, it's mostly for you, but occasionally I'll ask, someone will say, can I see something?
And you're like, no. Just kidding.
No, I mean,
no, for sure.
Then I have to, that's the thing, then I have to go find it.
Right.
But in general, nobody's going to, people don't generally ask to see something. I mean, they don't ask to see video. They want to see a shot or whatever. If they want to see video, they'd have to ask DIT.
Yeah, because you also mentioned, of course, that everybody, for the most part, is on their A game and more experience. So it's not necessarily as reliant on you to cover their backs because they've already got their backs covered.
I mean, in general, like, sometimes in between takes when people are resetting or whatever, if I need to see something, I'll just look very quickly. And so sometimes I'll just quickly send that picture to my iPad, and it'll be available if anybody wants to see anything. But
yeah, I guess one thing that I'm curious to get clarified for, I don't know, I guess like script supervisors just starting out that are jumping on sets where they're being asked for stuff that maybe they don't have a video feed going, or what the expectation is for a script supervisor on the...
Well, I mean, I think the expectation is if you're not going to have a picture of it, then you need to know what someone did at some point, which obviously, like I said earlier, it's impossible to watch everything. So that video feed, it can be important, or just what I tended to do, I'm sure, if I wasn't having a video feed, is I would just take a picture of the widest shot possible of the monitor, so you know what you can see in the background. And I'm sure I did that. For sure. Taking a picture of the monitor.
Yeah, because
having that available. And that is one perk of Apple. Not to say one thing or another, but like I will take a picture on my phone and just AirDrop it to my computer. And you don't need internet and you don't need Wi-Fi for that.
Yeah, that makes it nice and seamless.
Yeah,
because I guess me in my earlier years last year
when I was younger,
I bumped into scenarios where, like, I guess my personal approach, because I work from iPad and I do the photo of the thing, and I'm bad at taking photos, so like I try to remember at least like once per setup, or if something specific is happening, I know I need to watch for something, I'll get a photo of it. But for the most part, that isn't like a first priority for me. So I had been on sets early on where there is an expectation of like somebody from art will come over or a producer will come and check in. It's like, wait, you don't have why don't you have all the photos that we need? And I'm like, wait, am I supposed to be providing photo?
Like, you should not be.
Sure, which is, which I wanted to get.
And for sure, I've had wardrobe. I remember early on, we had one costumer that came to me and she's like, do you happen to have a photo of this? And she wasn't expecting me to, because she knew my computer was generally running, that I probably did.
And she's like, please, this one time, I need help.
One time and then 3 more times. It wasn't that often. I mean, they were generally very good about it. I mean, it is not your job to provide photos.
For sure.
They have 24 photos a second.
Yeah, that's one thing I talked about with Sarah Gerritsen too. She was talking about, and you mentioned the anxiety of certain moments of like having to catch stuff and watch stuff, but she mentioned the perfectionism like mindset where like I don't want to mess up on anything. I want to know what all the answers are. If I don't have the answer, I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst script supervisor.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing though. I've had producers say, do you have a photo of this, or do you have what happened here? It is the expectation. It is not your job to take a photo, but it is the expectation that you will know something.
That you have the answer.
Yes, which is unfortunate if you don't. And like I said, you can't watch everything.
Right.
And that's of course the memory that they're going to have of like, oh, well, they didn't know this and they didn't know this.
Yeah. Because I mean, again, Sarah Gerritsen mentioned a specific moment where she didn't have the answer this one time and she was freaking out. And they're like, don't worry, like we can do playback right there. It's fine. Like that kind of.
Was it VTR or was it?
I forget what the issue was. I think it was like, well, because it was non-union world, so it was probably just the DP could run the camera and just they could watch it again.
Yeah, on our show,
but I don't know.
They do play stuff like when stunts they want to watch something back. In general, they try not to
Playback
watch
doesn't
it.
happen too often.
Yeah.
But in that case, she didn't have the answer, and they were like, well, we can just go back and look. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It used to be like they used to. I remember years ago, it was like, oh, we can't play back. It'll ruin the footage. And then you're like, what are you talking about?
And on digital, they weren't running film? Because film's different.
Well, no, they would never. You can't play back film.
Yeah.
That, for sure, you can't play back.
You can't roll that back.
But for digital, they would be like, oh, no, we can't play it back. I'm like, really? Because it's creating a file that is not going to delete.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But in general,
sure.
They don't like to play back stuff, and we generally don't play back stuff because we run takes so many times that you're like,
yeah. No, for sure. All right. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else I'm missing here that I'm thinking somebody might want to know, but I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff.
I felt like I was very polarizing on certain topics.
We'll see what happens. Well, I think that's kind of the interesting aspect for me too. Is like, again, as a script supervisor, you're a one-person team, and you never.
I would love to have an assistant.
Yeah, aside from that one time that you ended up on set with another script supervisor, and you're like, I guess we're here together. Let's figure this out.
Well, I will say on that job. The producer who hired me was someone I'd worked with on a lot of low budget films, and I was the one. She was like, "Oh yeah, we have it in the budget to hire 2 people." I'm like, "Okay," and so I was the one that called Shannon. And said, "I don't know how this is going to work, but they're hiring 2 people, so let's do it."
Yeah,
and it's a union movie. That was I don't think it ever made it anywhere. It was called What Love Is, and it was directed and written by a guy named Mars Callahan, who'd done another movie called Pool Hall Junkies, and that was like his sort of bigger movie. And it was he directed and starred in it, and you could tell. That's why he had 2 script supervisors, because he was starring in it, and he wanted sort of 2 sets of eyes on it. But it was terrible because every time he cut and watched the footage, you could tell he was only looking at himself.
Shucks, man.
Very nice guy, but
yeah, that happens. But I imagine.
I hope he doesn't watch this.
I imagine the dynamic between you and the other script soup would have been like, almost like a sporting event, like referees, where you're watching the action and then you have to confer on like.
I feel like we
throw the flags.
Yeah, I feel like at the start of it, we kind of delineated the jobs.
Yeah, you mentioned
But then over time, it was like, like I said, you can't watch everything, and like if someone asks us a question, like if I didn't see it, like, did you see it?
Yeah, and sometimes you can't help but watch.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
because especially if you're a union script supervisor, you're so used to it. I mean, to this day, like if I'm passing by a set or whatever, and I hear rolling, if I'm visiting someone, I go like this.
It's funny.
When I first started out, when you're not used to having the stopwatch around your neck, I would go to sleep at night and feel it, like the phantom feeling of the stopwatch.
Dang. Stuck at
work.
Do
you not wear a stopwatch?
I don't.
So
I stopwatch from my phone.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I have because I studied with Randy Feldman.
Yeah, me too.
And I have my physical one because I refound it again. I'm like, oh my gosh, I still have it. But normally I just have I kind of hate that I drain my battery doing it sometimes. But
yeah, I don't. I have my phone on set all day, but I don't use it at all.
If I need it, I like how quiet it is with my.
The only time I use my phone for work purposes now is I have data on my phone and I only have a Wi-Fi iPad. So on stage and set, we always have Wi-Fi. But if we're ever in a situation where I need
like on location
to send
or something,
the notes at the end of the day and the Wi-Fi is just terrible, I will.
You'll hotspot it.
No, you can't hotspot on AT&T. At least unless I don't. I think
I have AT&T. I hotspot. Really? Yeah.
Do you pay extra for that?
No.
You have to show me how to do it. Tethering was like illegal at the time, or You had to pay extra for it.
I don't
Anyway.
think it's tethering.
Anyway, so I will just
Sure, I'll show
airdrop
you.
the notes to my phone and then.
Oh, okay. That works too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
you'll have to show me how to.
Yeah, we'll see. I wonder if... Yeah, all right. So, okay, the point being...
We're not doing that.
The point being is, as a script supervisor, you don't often get to check each other's notes. And how do you do this? How would you do this? What's your thought process? We don't even get to witness each other on set do stuff. Like, at least when you're pursuing the camera stuff, you work your way up on the AC side. You see how the DP's working. You see the gaffer light.
Yeah.
But for us, it's just like, well, we studied and we find what works.
It's right.
Yeah, and as long as so it's weird. So it is nice to hear you, because of course you've been doing it for plenty, and it's like, all right, this is
20 years.
20 years. You roll your eyes at it.
I can't believe it's 20 years.
Congratulations.
I can't believe, like, when I first started, I was looking for the older script supervisors for advice and whatever, and now I'm the oldest script supervisor.
Oh no!
But I will say, the horrible thing about it is that I'm coming to a time now where Goldbergs may be ending. We may do another season, but it's going to end soon enough.
Sure.
And I have stopped getting calls. I mean, I do not get calls anymore. And like I said, I had that one interview, which is the first call I've gotten in ages, and I didn't get the job. When Goldbergs ends, I have no idea. I mean, back in 2011, 12, 13, I was very fortunate that, like, my career was, I was getting all kinds of calls. I did Party Down, I did Children's Hospital, I did Wilfred, and then from that, and even to go to the Goldbergs, this is how I got the job on the Goldbergs. I had absolutely no job prospect. Wilfred was ending. One of our showrunners on Wilfred, super nice guy, I said, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no job opportunity. And he said, well, my friend Adam I know him from our writers group. His pilot was just picked up. Maybe he needs somebody. And I said, well, if they did a pilot, they probably have somebody. And
right.
But he sent a text to Adam, and this is what the text said. Now, Wilfred is a very dark comedy. He's a very funny writer. He said, I have a script supervisor who's great. His name is Ari. He's wondering if you guys need a script supervisor. He loves nothing more than to supervise scripts. Now, of course, it was a joke. But that was like the tagline of the text.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks later, I get this call from the UPM, and he said, "Oh yeah, we did a pilot. We have someone already." And I was like, "Okay, that's it. That's a dead end." A few weeks after that, I got another call from the UPM, the same guy, who said, "So are you still available for an interview?" I had no idea what happened between those two time periods.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, I'm available. So I go to the interview, and my interview, which normally would have been with Adam, was not. He was busy doing something else. I got interviewed by Lou, who is this writer-producer which even to this day, I don't know why he was in the interview, because he was a writer on the show. He wasn't like the on-set person. He wasn't meant to be the on-set person.
Yeah.
That sort of happened.
Yeah.
So I interviewed with him and with Seth Gordon, who had directed the pilot. I understand why I met with him. He had directed the pilot, and he was going to be directing
some episodes,
multiple episodes. I have no idea why Lou was there. I'm happy he was. When I was waiting, I was sitting in the waiting room, waiting to be interviewed, and I like telling the story. I hope you don't mind.
No, please.
What time? Sorry, what time is it, by the way?
It is. It's 12:52.
So this is a little bit of a story, but basically, totally tangentially, nothing to do with script supervisor or anything. About 2 weeks before, a friend of mine who likes the Dixie Chicks, we sat down and watched the movie Shut Up and Sing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a documentary about the Dixie Chicks scandal. I don't know if you know what happened.
Not familiar.
Okay, so this happened in 2008. My interview was in 2012.
Okay.
The scandal happened a couple years before 2008. I don't remember exactly. Maybe about 2003. I don't remember. But basically, they were in. You know the Dixie Chicks?
Yes.
Is that a yes? Really, yes? Dixie Chicks is a.
I know the name.
They're a female,
Yeah.
a trio. They
Yeah.
sing country, pop country.
Okay, it's probably why I'm not too familiar. But yeah, I know the name.
But they were very popular in the early 2000s. Very, very popular. And they were at a show in England, in London, and in the middle, at the time, George W. Bush was president, and a lot of liberals hated him. Thought he was an idiot, which he pretty much was. Nothing compared to Trump. But sorry, not to bring politics into this. But anyway, a lot of people didn't like him. But he was at his highest approval rating at that point. And they were in London, and they were in the middle of a show, and Natalie Maines, who was the lead singer of the Dixie Chicks, they were in between songs, and she was just talking to the audience and talking about how they're from Texas, and said something to the effect of how they were ashamed that the president was from Texas. It was basically there's a camera way in the back that caught this on camera, and the audience. I mean, it's such a big stadium, like barely heard it. You could barely tell what she said, but there was a little applause. It was so nothing. So a week later, some English newspaper printed it that had happened, and it got picked up by the American news, and it created this huge scandal. Like she should never have said that outside of the U.S. and whatever, you know. Well, now George W. Bush, I mean, is known as like this complete idiot, but at the time he was at his highest approval rating, and it created this huge thing for them because they were country singers, and
yeah, and that's pre cancel culture and all that social media stuff.
Right.
So yeah.
And so they lost all their sponsorship, they lost their tour, everything, and it was like sort of like the downfall of the Dixie Chicks. It was a huge event at the time, and so in 2008 they came out with this song called "Not Ready to Make Nice," which they ended up winning a Grammy for, but it was sort of the story of what had happened, and a documentary called "Shut Up and Sing" came out about the whole rise and fall of the Dixie Chicks. And the title comes from a letter that they had received, Natalie Maines had received from someone who had been a fan, saying basically, you know, shut up and sing. Don't talk about your views.
Yeah.
And so, so that happened. That movie came out in 2008. So I had seen it. At the time in 2008, I knew the Dixie Chicks vaguely. I didn't really know any of their songs except a couple of them. But I was always fascinated by the scandal, and so I went to see the movie. It's a very good movie. I was taken by the fact that in this documentary, there's a camera way, way up in the audience that catches this moment. Now, the rest of the documentary, you understand that they were filming, you know, what's going on, what happens to them. But it's very fortunate that they have this one shot, because you need that one shot. You need to see the impetus of how it all started. And again, it's so nothing. And it grew into this huge, huge event. And I always thought, even at the time when I saw the original movie, that it was very fortunate that they had this shot. Because without it, you have no movie. And so in 2012, 2012 or 13, when I interviewed for the job, about 2 weeks before, totally coincidentally, a friend of mine who loves the song Not Ready to Make Nice, which was born out of this event, it was like one of her running songs. You know, she's a huge runner. And she was telling me about that, and I was like, oh yeah, I love the story behind it because of this movie, and she had never heard of the movie. So we sat down and watched the movie, and I told her how interesting it was that they had this one shot in this documentary, because without it, there's no movie. And so 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in the waiting room to meet with Seth Gordon and Lou, who I thought I was meeting with Adam. I didn't know I was meeting with them. So I'm sitting waiting to meet with them, and I look up on my phone Seth Gordon to see what he's done because I don't know him at all. Like I said, I didn't know anybody going to this job. Our Wilford producer had sent a text to Adam saying he loves nothing more than to supervise scripts. And I see that that Seth Gordon was a producer on Shut Up and Sing. And I totally coincidentally had seen it for a second time 2 weeks before. And so I go into the interview, we're talking, and one of the other movies he had been a producer on was a documentary called The King of Kong, which is...
I have seen that one.
Yes. So
that
he was a producer on that. And I've heard of it, I've never seen it.
That's good.
And so I go into this interview, and we're talking, and they can tell I'm very much a nerd. I wear that. We haven't talked about the trivia stuff, but I host trivia nights, and I was a math teacher. I'm very much a nerd. I like that badge, whatever.
You own it.
Yeah, I'm not a Star Wars person. That's like Adam Goldberg is a huge nerd, but he's a Star Wars nerd. So we're both big TV nerds, but I was never like a Star Wars person. Anyway, so we're talking, and they can tell that I'm very nerdy or whatever, and the interview is going fine. And at the end of the interview, I said, I have to say, you're a producer on a movie that I love, and I can tell, like, Lou is looking at me, like, saying, which one? And I can tell that they think I'm going to say The King of Kong, because just the way the conversation has gone. And I say, Shut Up and Sing. And Lou goes, oh, you weren't expecting to say that, were you? And so we're talking about that for a minute, and I said, I have to say, and I said this when it came out in 2008, and I just totally coincidentally happened to see the movie 2 weeks ago. I have to say, I think it's amazing that you have that shot, because without that shot, there is no movie. You have to see the impetus. And they had said that they were just documenting the tour. They didn't know that it was gonna. They happened to have a camera rolling because they were documenting the tour. And so I said, I find it amazing that you have this one shot, because without it, you don't have a movie. And Seth goes, I shot that. And at that point, I was like, okay, I think I have the job. I think I have the job now.
Oh, nice.
Because I just complimented him on like the one thing
the reason the whole movie works at all. Dang, he shot it.
And so, and again, like I said, on set, he didn't trust me clearly at first, but he was always nice to me. I mean,
Yeah. Professional, cordial.
But to this day, Lou still will never forget the text. He's like, I just always remember that he loves nothing more than to supervise scripts. Supervise
scripts. It's what we do.
Yes. But it was said, of course, said as a total joke.
No, for sure.
But it stuck with him.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
And I only know that I probably saw the text at the time when he sent it. Because I probably said, what did you write? But Lou reminds me of that
it's
all the time.
It's a nice inside joke that's continued since. Yeah. So I feel like, because you mentioned the unknown of like life after the Goldbergs, I feel like my gut says it sounds like it's going to be something similar to the story you just told, or it's like, well, the show's ending and you have all these connections here, and they'll be doing stuff.
As an example, we just finished our season 8, and about a month ago, our producer, who is our line producer, she's one of the best producers I've ever worked with. I mean, she's the most loyal, and Adam Goldberg is crazy. I mean, he's a super nice guy, but he gets in his head about, it's called the Goldbergs, and he hasn't been with the show for a couple years, but for seasons 1 through 7, we did so many reshoots for nothing. I mean, like a line that he didn't like, or we would just get pages of reshoots, and we probably could have been a 4-day show, because the amount that we were reshooting, we would have to film the episode in 4 days and then do reshoots for a day. Since he left the show in season 7, we haven't done any reshoots, I don't think. And the majority of the reshoots that we did were so nothing. I mean, like, just so unnecessary. Because he just would get in his head. And Annette, who was our producer, who is this wonderful producer, if it weren't for her, we would have done 10,000 more reshoots.
Mm-hmm.
She would talk him down from a ledge every day.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it's called the Goldbergs, and he can do that, but she would talk him down from 10,000 more reshoots that we would have done.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's this wonderful producer, and about a month ago, she emailed me and she said, we have a possible pilot in April. We don't know specific dates yet, but we'll let you know, because she does a pilot every year, and then comes back to the Goldbergs.
Just for fun, yeah.
No, whatever.
Yeah, that's a process.
So I'm like, great. So, but then when I emailed her back, a few days later, she said, because this was during our hiatus week, some weeks ago. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry. The director already has already has someone that they want to use." I'm like, okay, So, had a job, not have a job. Mm-hmm. But the hope is that you work with these people and you develop these relationships. And I think Annette. Now the problem is Annette, who will hire me, I think in a second, on any single camera show, also does multicam, and I have no multicam experience, and she has said she will not hire me for multicam.
She told you that.
She has told me that until I get multicam experience. And I'm like, interesting.
Interesting, for sure.
And so I've tried to learn multicam, but who's going to hire you on a multicam until you have multicam experience?
There's always...
And every script supervisor has gone through that.
Yeah. What's the main concern between jumping between single and multi? It's just the whole workflow?
Workflow,
okay.
Yeah. And from what I understand, multicam is way easier. But I don't know that for a fact. I've been told that. But I don't know the workflow. And I've tried to learn, but who's going to hire you without doing it?
Yeah.
I understand with single cam, like you get started in these low budget, 2-day films or short films or whatever, and you learn the workflow. Whereas multicam, there's no low budget college student doing a multicam.
I've been on some crazy multicam indies.
I will say it's going to be different than I did that multicam, that film with the dual script supervisors that was filmed like a multicam. We did not script supervise it like a multicam.
Okay.
I don't think.
I don't know.
We sort of did a hybrid.
I guess there's a difference between shooting with multiple cameras and multicam show.
Yes, there absolutely is.
Different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shoot with 2 and 3 cameras all the time in Golbergs.
Yeah.
It's just a different workflow, and there's the expectation of the notes is different. The notes are done differently, and the expectation of the director and producers is different.
Okay. Dang.
Yeah, it's because you have multiple cameras in a proscenium. Mm-hmm. It's not so much about coverage; it's more about the lines. But the expectation of continuity is still there, even though you're running takes that are much longer.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then there's something called a laugh spread, where if you're working on sitcom, where when you're in rehearsal, you have to make sure you time it out for where the laughter is going to be.
Yeah, like Big Bang Theory style and stuff.
Yeah. So that, from what I don't remember the exact timing, but Big Bang Theory laugh spread is going to be way different than a show that's not funny. Right. I mean, I'm sure actual material of Big Bang Theory, if a show's 22 minutes, it was probably 18 or something like that. Yeah,
because they pause so much.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're pretty much at time. I don't know.
We didn't talk about trivia at all.
We can end with trivia. The thing that was interesting to me about trivia was I was curious on how what trivia does for if you also host.
I have a game tonight.
You have a game tonight?
Yeah. I have 6 games this week.
Oh, dang. All right, you're professional at trivia.
Oh, yeah. It's become
It's
become a second business.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's not it's not lucrative enough to be a full-time career.
Sure. It's just like a fun side thing.
It's a side gig that's getting more frontal and more frontal, especially during hiatus times.
Dang. All right. So what does that entail? Like people know you're trivia guru, and you have
Yes.
kind of like games set up, and you.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, during COVID, it has made me prosper, and I hate to say that I've prospered during COVID, because so many people are not.
Yeah.
But basically, before COVID, I had a small side gig called Super Script Trivia that I would go and do like a birthday party, or run a trivia game at a birthday party or a game night. I did like a wedding the day before a wedding for all the out of town guests. I ran a trivia game because they needed activities.
Yeah.
And that was probably once every 4 months or something that I would do something. When COVID happened and nobody was leaving their house, I went virtual. I took it virtual, and I figured out the best way to do a pub trivia game over Zoom. And I ran a couple games for some different people, and it has skyrocketed. And so I've done, so many companies are so tired of the cocktail hour where their employees are just on Zoom having to talk to each other. They want a structured activity where they can do an office mixer but have someone leading a structured activity that's fun.
Okay.
So I have done a ton of law firms and tax firms, and I have a game tonight that is for a company called Bread Wallet that is a Bitcoin company that I think they're based in Chicago. I'm not quite sure, but all their employees work from home, and so they're having a game night as an office, fun game night.
Yeah, an office hang. The new age.
This is my second game for them, and it started because one of the employees was on a game night for a birthday party, and she was like, "Oh, this would be fun to do for my office," and so this is my second game with them. I do a ton of games for a company called Epic, which they're based in North Carolina. They're the company. They're the video game company that makes Fortnite.
Epic Games.
And I've done probably 10 to 15 games for them. And every time I'm like, is this going to be a repeat group? Because I need to know, because I have material. Right. I have enough material for many games. It's just if I'm going to have new people, I want to use repeat material so that I'm not exhausting all my material. And most of the games are new games. I mean, this is a huge company.
So they have many employees.
They have thousands of employees.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing a game for 30 people, and the next time I'm doing another game for 30 people, it's completely different.
It's a different group.
Because they have a morale office that this woman in the morale office, when she tells them, "Oh, I have a guy that does trivia games," and they're like, "Okay, great," and she'll tell me, "Okay, this is a new group. This is a new group." And that's her sole job is morale for the company.
Right. So that's awesome.
And it's gotten so big that I've had to hire independent hosts, because especially at Christmas in December, at that time of year when everybody wanted office parties for the holiday, one week I had 11 games, and so and everybody always wants a Thursday. I don't know why, but Thursday is really popular.
Getting people pumped for we're
getting
getting close.
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
Close.
So if I would have a game at Thursday at 4, then I needed to hire someone else to run the same game for a different company at 4, and so I have two regular hosts that I use, and then a couple other, and they're just freelance hosts. And
yeah. So what's your favorite part of running the trivia side hustle?
Knowing the answers. The
Alex Trebek effect, right?
No, when I ran a game for the writers of what's the name of the show?
Rick and Morty.
No, similar. Not Family Guy, but American Dad.
Okay.
So it was all the writers of American Dad, the creator of American Dad, not Seth MacFarlane, but one of the probably creator who went to the producers to pitch it.
Sure.
And it was like 20 people, and when you have like a game night where they're into it and they know the answers, but they have to really work with a team to come up with the answers, it's great. And I've done it so often now, I get the same wrong answers and the same right answers, and and I know what to say now that will make people laugh, and
Yeah.
So
because I think about myself a little bit, because
I think about myself all the time.
Because back in at the end of college, I forget. I think it was 20. I was turning 25, I think, and maybe it was 23. It was like the age of like. I had made the decision that I wanted to like embrace my inner kid and forget trying to be an adult. Like, just let's have a game night and let's have fun. Forget, like, I'm just gonna have like Pokemon plates and whatever. And I had a friend bring over Twister, and like we played Twister and stuff, and it was like super fun, and everybody bought into it, and it was super cool. And then I think the following year I made a year commitment of like every month I want to host like some sort of game night event.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed bringing people together and having people buy into the whole thing. Like when you said, when people are taking this trivia seriously and they're actually trying.
Yeah.
And, like it. And then my headline event, like the headline event of the night, was a Twister tournament. So people kind of knew that, like, all right, this is gonna be interesting. So I did that for the whole year. I did 12, and then I sporadically kind of that died off, and I killed that. But regardless, being a game night host is a very specific thing. I don't know if you have. I'm assuming that you've also hosted game nights that are non-trivia, or if trivia's like if you do board game stuff, or if you.
I'm sure I have. I've been part of game nights like that. I've had game nights where, like at Thanksgiving, we always do games after, but not specifically.
But when you're hosting, trivia is your preference.
Yes. When I'm playing, my preference is taboo.
Taboo.
Yes.
Okay.
Or balderdash.
Taboo stresses me out, man.
It can, yeah. I can tell you a big debate I had one night on a taboo game, and I won't tell you what side I was on.
Okay.
There's only one right side, I think.
So all about polarization today, huh?
Yes. So the card, you remember how taboo is played, where it's the word on top and the words you can't say below.
Yes, you have a timer.
And so the word on top was JOB.
Okay.
And the words below were like career, money, etc., whatever. And so the person who saw the JOB said, okay, this is the person in the Bible who was tested by God. All these bad things happened to him. And so the players said, Job. And the reader said, right, and moved on. And everyone else was like, no, that's not the word. Who's right?
What, you want me to make? All right.
What's your feeling about that? And then I'll tell you if you're right or not.
Okay. No, I'm curious. My gut reaction is, on the day I'll probably be like, it's clean. Just let it. It's good. Let it pass, because whatever interpretation that was there, it was communicated, and
that's the right answer.
Okay.
The correct answer is, the point of these games is to make you think outside the box, to think outside of being able to describe something without using those words. Just because those words are there, as long as the people say what is there, whether it's Job or Job. The whole point of the game is to think outside the box.
Yes. Stop trying to strip the fun from it, people. We're here to have fun. But yeah, like trivia for me stresses me out too, because I like, even when you're going through like the actress from the one thing, like you're having.
What is her name? Oh God, no, that's gonna stress me out. Trying to think of her name.
It was Jennifer.
I want to say, I keep wanting to say Jennifer Irwin, but that's not her because she's an actress on our show. and she's a very good actress, and you'd recognize her if you saw her.
But it wasn't her.
It's Jennifer Coolidge. That's her name. Jennifer Coolidge.
You got it. Close that loop. Whew. Because like you're saying that stuff, and my brain, I have a lot of difficulty like in the moment. Like I don't know.
Don't you remember the scene? Don't you remember the scene? Did you see Legally Blonde?
I don't know. That movie did not entice me to
Reese
watch.
Witherspoon?
Yeah, she dresses up in pink and goes to law school.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very famous scene from that movie with Jennifer Coolidge. That's why I bring it up.
Oh, okay.
And you ever saw American Pie?
Was not my cup of tea either.
She was Stifler's mom. In that. She was like the older woman that one of the characters was having sex with, basically.
Okay. Stifler is played by...
Stifler was played by... he is one of those actors with 3 names. I can picture him.
Is Ashton Kutcher in the movie?
It wasn't Ashton Kutcher.
Thinking of that 70s show now,
It was something William Scott or... I can picture him. I cannot think of his name.
I can picture his face, too. Regardless...
He doesn't really look like Ashton Kutcher, though.
No, I don't... I feel like Ashton Kutcher would be in that type of movie, though.
No, but it was Jason Biggs and a guy who was on Wilford that I cannot think of his name now. Very nice guy.
Elijah Wood? I'm just
kidding. He was the boyfriend of the main female.
Okay.
I can't think of his name, but it was Jason Biggs and Allison Hannigan and that whole crew. And Stifler played by Sean William Scott.
Okay, there you go. It's a weird name with 3 first names.
I think that's his name. I'm pretty sure.
That sounds right. With that being said, I think we're going to end it here.
Sure.
Thanks for... I guess the only thing I also... All right. We'll end it here. Is there any place people how are you on social media? Like, you don't really Instagram?
So I don't really use Instagram or Twitter. I'm on Facebook, but I will say that my one website is the trivia website, which is called Superscript Trivia. It's Superscript, like script supervising, but Superscript, because I always liked the idea that Superscript was also the term that you, in math, that you, when you write something a power above, that's called a superscript. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the font when you're typing. So, and I thought that would be a good name since it's script supervising, that it was born out of that. And so it's superscripttrivia.com, 2 T's, all one word. And that's the website for if you would like a trivia game.
Sweet. So people can find you there in both capacities. The trivia. No, that's specifically trivia.
It's specifically trivia. And I'm on Facebook just under my name.
And then keep in the loop when on Goldbergs news and
when Goldbergs ends, I'll need a job.
And then scoop him up.
Union job.
Yes. All right. Cool.
Although that's the thing, people ask me like, would I do non-union stuff, and I would hope that I don't have to, because I want the pension and welfare and benefits and money. Right. Money is good.
It's helpful. And
it's not bad.
Yeah.
But if I had to do non-union, sure. I think there's a possibility of a non-union movie for me over the summer.
That'd be like a favor kind of thing, right? Versus
it's a guy that I know that I've worked with before who does he's hired me on a couple commercials, and this is like a low budget indie movie that it's going to be shooting in Georgia, and he's asked me to read the script, which is a surefire sign that he wants. Whenever they ask you to read the script, they want to make sure that you like the script.
It's like, now that you like it, are you invested now?
I have not read it yet, but I've worked with him before, and I know he likes me, so.
Okay, so that might be a thing.
It's a possibility, if nothing else.
But that makes sense. I mean, if you have the personal relationship with the creators.
Yeah, and I also have no other job right now for the hiatus period.
Right. So,
although I do have possible trivia games set up, but I may have to hire.
You're like, I'm booked up. Sorry. Yeah. Too much trivia going on. All right.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for being on. All right, bye everybody.